Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on Friday, May 22nd. Good to have you with us today. We have Joan Stack from the State Historical Society.
Hello.
It's always a pleasure to sit and chat with you because you've got so much information to pass along to people.
Well, we have so much there.
Yeah, you do. What's our topic today?
Well, today I want to talk about an exhibit that we have in our corridor gallery, and we also have a book or an exhibition catalog to go along with it. The exhibition is a series of cartoons by the cartoonist for the Post-Dispatch, Tom Englehardt, who worked there from 1962 all the way up into the 90s. And we are showcasing the best cartoons of his career.
Yeah. Now, and the book is 4 Turbulent Decades. Is that right?
Yes.
And are all the cartoons, are there cartoons in here from 4 decades?
Yes, and the cartoons, we selected, we have over 7,000 cartoons by Tom Englehardt.
He did 7,000 cartoons?
Yes, virtually every day for 4 decades. So we are just showcasing a small segment of the cartoons, but we've really tried to select cartoons that either represent momentous events during that period or represent events or topics that are still very relevant today. And I brought some examples of both of those things. For example, here I brought a cartoon that Tom Englehardt did regarding the environmental movement, which is still very much a part of what we think about today.
If you want to see what we're talking about, go to kbia.org, watch the vodcast of this. This cartoon is a bird's nest with planet Earth inside the nest. What year was that published?
Well, this was published in the 1960s, so this is
60s.
very early in the environmental movement, in the late 60s, and it's called Fragile Handle with Care.
And it's still so relevant today.
Yeah.
In fact, even more relevant today.
Perhaps so. And Tom Englehardt was well known for his environmental stances, and you'll see several environmental cartoons in the exhibit.
Yeah. The next one that you have is what?
Well, this is a cartoon that represents something that some people may remember, which is at the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s when the Berlin Wall fell and communism fell across Europe. And so this cartoon is called Fresh Breeze in Europe, and it shows an image of the Iron Curtain blowing upward and people coming out from behind the Iron Curtain.
And there's a hammer and the sickle on the Iron Curtain. And it looks like there's a breeze from behind. It's lifted, and people are coming out to freedom.
Yes, and of course these are events that changed our world. And as you walk through the exhibit, it's almost like going back in time and experiencing some of those things again. We start with the Kennedy assassination, and we deal with the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement, the death of Martin Luther King, all of these important events. We get to Nixon and Reagan and all of these things.
And he did a cartoon every day.
Almost every day. Regularly, he did 5 a week, except for when he was on vacation. And so he produced a massive amount of work. And it's a wonderful way to get inside a certain time period. And I think about our young people today who are very oriented towards the visual. We've got Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, where they try to understand the world through these images. And in some ways, editorial cartoons are perfect ways for them to get into history.
You know, I open up the paper every day to look for Darko's editorial cartoon, because it's a way of thinking. It's a way of seeing into somebody else's head, too, what they're thinking.
Yeah, and so in some ways the artist both participates in history, but he can also influence, or she can influence the way people think. In fact, we had a big event, and Tom Englehardt came and spoke, and John Darko was there. So it was nice to see him. That was on May 9th.
So not very long ago.
Not very long ago.
Yeah. And the last picture that we have here is?
The last one I brought is also one that I think applies today as much as it did back in 1976. This was published right before the election of 1976, and it shows the Liberty Tree losing all of its leaves because of voter apathy, which of course is still a problem. There's a large segment of the voting age population doesn't vote. And this particular election, the voter turnout was unusually low. But I think it's kind of sad to see.
Oh, it's more than sad. No matter how I try to analyze it and think about it, I cannot understand how somebody living in this country of ours, where we have the right to vote, we have the freedom to vote, and you look at other countries, they are dying, literally dying to vote, but yet we shrug it off. And what is it? 25, 30% of the population takes time to vote?
Yeah, especially in those off-year elections.
Yeah.
And then in presidential elections, sometimes we get up to 60, but in other places it's in the 80s and 90%.
It should be 100%. It should be 100%. And when people say, well, whether I vote or not, it doesn't make a difference. It does make a difference. And a lot of times especially with the local elections, when you see an election being won by 3 or 4 or 5 votes, it makes a difference. And when you think of a presidential election and maybe only 50 or 60% of the people vote, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. And this, of course, was happening back in the 70s. So Tom Englehardt, in many ways, shows us who we are and where we've been, and perhaps helps us to think a little bit about where we're going.
Okay, so this exhibit will be up how long?
It will be up until October 17th.
Oh, so they got all summer long to see it.
Yeah,
okay.
And I hope we'll have people coming in. We're open Tuesday through Saturday. This is in the Corridor Gallery, so you can come in at 8 in the morning, and we will be closing at 4:45 on the weekdays and 3:30 on the weekends.
And is the book available at the...
Yes, and the book is $20, and it's a beautiful book. It has all the cartoons in the exhibit. It's about 66 cartoons, and extensive discussion of each cartoon. And I'll just give another plug for it. It has a biography by Tom Englehardt, and then its introduction is actually a conversation between Tom Englehardt and Jules Feiffer. Okay. And if you know much about cartooning back in the 50s and 60s, Jules Feiffer's name may be familiar to you. He was the cartoonist for The Village Voice. He was also a screenwriter, wrote the screenplay for Robert Altman's Popeye, if you remember that.
All right. And it was edited by Joan Stack.
That's right.
And it's available at the Historical Society.
That's right. And I hope people will come and see it.
Thank you very much, Joan.
Thank
Always
you.
A pleasure having you here. Monday, Kathy Barton and Dave Pear will be with us. Our program directed by Travis McMillen, Reynolds Journalism Institute. Audio is Pat Akers from KBIA. Our floor director, Lowell Thomas, and our assistant producer and guest coordinator, Uncle James Mauser. Something you'd like to hear or see? I would love to hear from you. Drop me an email, pepperp@missouri.edu. Bye-bye.